It feels like every week something new comes out, and then a few months later, the game is being labeled dead.
Palworld has reached power levels that seemed impossible, hitting over 2 million concurrent players on Steam.
It's looking like Palworld is a dead game. And so, yeah, Palworld has lost 2/3 of its players in 2 weeks.
Games live and die nowadays by how relevant they can stay after launch. So instead of developing new games, big studios have created strategies to keep players playing and paying. The live service model has taken over, and with it emerged a culture where nothing is worse than a dead game. Which is why it's so weird that Pocketpair, the creators of Palworld, are actively encouraging players to try other games. And when I talked to John, he echoed this same feeling of the founders.
Just play the games you like. If you finish in a day, cool, good job. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Play the next one.
What's going on? Does Pocketpair know something we don't? Maybe we've been thinking about video games all wrong. Maybe games dying isn't bad at all, but actually something we desperately need. But what does it mean to be a dead game? Well, there's a few definitions out there. However, most people agree on 3 things. When a game loses the majority of its players, when a game loses its dev support, or even when it loses its competitive scene. Many people like to call a game dead when they don't like it anymore, but we're not counting that. So if this is the standard definition, most video games have bit the dust. Practically every game in existence sits in this category. Aside from a handful of untouchables that I like to feature in my Should Be Dead series, it really isn't possible to live very long. So what happened? Why is a game dying considered a bad thing? Well, something's changed over the past few years. When I was younger, a game dying was normal, even kind of exciting. When I got Wind Waker, I loved it, I played it, but then I moved on. When I got Star Wars Battlefront, I loved it, I played it, and then I moved on. I got The Hobbit. It sucked, so I moved on. There's something beautiful about that. While I loved all of these experiences playing all of these games, except for The Hobbit, I always was excited to try the next thing. And I was fine when the game was no longer popular because it was time to look for the next magical experience. Don't get me wrong, people still do this, but something's happened to the video game industry. The industry has a new goal: to build games that people will play as much as possible and for as long as possible. This goal has changed players' perspectives on gaming, and it's something we all know now as live service.
I don't think it really serves anyone to kind of push gamers to just play the same game day in, day out. There are games that you can just like play every single day for months on end and never burn out, League of Legends, Dota, most MMOs, right? But they're designed to be like that. Whereas what we're seeing now is a trend of, I won't necessarily say who's trying to push it, but a lot more people are trying to push gamers to play games that aren't really designed to be played for months on end. 4 months on end.
Now, is it bad to support a game after launch? Not at all, right? Continuing to balance and improve the experience for players makes perfect sense. After so much work, it's natural to nurture the new community that's formed around the game. And who doesn't want more of an already great thing? I mean, I plan on releasing more content for my game Fallen Worlds after it releases. The real problem, though, is that many companies have made live service their entire focus, releasing updates over and over at the expense of a new title. I mean, you've all seen the GTA 6 comments. The game has taken forever to make. Games over the years have just become these SaaS products, or as we like to know them in the industry, GaaS, or Games as a Service. It's an investor's favorite type of company thanks to consistent revenue streams. But why has live service shifted our mentality, making us believe that games dying equals bad? Well, it's a fundamental rule of SaaS. To be the top dog, you need to monopolize as much of the market as possible, meaning whoever captures most of the amount of people wins long term. For example, if you want to search for something on the internet, you use Google. If you want to design something, you use Adobe. If you want a game communication platform, you use Discord. These SaaS businesses are so valuable, not necessarily because of their technology, but because they've cornered the majority of people in their market. And the most expensive thing in SaaS is customer acquisition. And for context, acquiring a new customer is way more expensive than keeping an existing one. 5 times more. Getting a new customer through all the hoops from awareness to caring to buying is so difficult. So put yourself in these big studio shoes. Imagine making an incredible game, you get millions of players, and then your game just fizzles out, and now you have to persuade every one of those players to come back the next time you make a new title, which is 5 times harder than if you just retain them in the first place by updating your current game. Which is why over the past 15 years, most large game companies sell games as a service, and they feed us this idea that a game should never die. The result, we get games that stay around longer, games that make you feel like other games aren't worth your time because of FOMO, and games that are monetized well beyond what's normal. Although this is good for big studios' pocketbooks, this forever game approach has consequences for players and developers. Some indie studios like Pocketpair have recognized this though, even in light of their unbelievable success. On Steam alone, it had a higher player count than Counter-Strike, Cyberpunk, and Dota 2. It has the second highest peak on Steam ever. No one saw Palworld coming, and its success is something AAA studios drool over. But since Palworld's released, the game fell off, and it fell fast. If this was EA, there would have been mass panic with this drop of players. But Pocketpair doesn't seem bothered. Even odder, they're actively encouraging people to play other titles, stating on Twitter, play lots of games, try different genres, and frequently flick through indie libraries to find hidden gems.
I don't think you need to be kind of pushing yourself to play the same game all the time. It's not healthy for us, it's not healthy for developers, it's not healthy for gamers, it's not healthy for gaming media, and it's just not healthy for our industry, because the more we push this kind of narrative, the more very large companies are going to just say gamers want more live service, and we're just going to get more of these like really soulless live service games that come out and then get shut down 9 months later, 12 months later, because they're not making enough money, and we all lose in that case. So
what an awesome mindset / company. And Pocketpair is not the only one who thinks this way. If you look at some viral hits of the past year, they're all following a similar pattern. They blow up, take over Twitch, make millions, and then disappear. Same goes for bigger indies like Larian, who made Baldur's Gate 3. Larian thought about making DLC for Baldur's Gate 3 after its immense success, but eventually they decided to just make something new, even though they can make millions on Baldur's Gate. They may not be indies, right, in terms of this size, but they are in the way that they do business. And this mentality of doing what's best for the player is what we need to shape the future of game development. Letting games die just makes sense. It means more games succeed and more developers get into the limelight. Not to mention, devs get to move on to these new projects. Can you imagine if there's only one battle royale or only one kind of platformer? Now imagine only one kind of digital pet game. Well, until Palworld, that's basically all we had. Without death, there would be no innovation. I talked about Pokemon being stagnant for months before Palworld ever came out, and the game proves just how much players were dying for something fresh. That's not to say Pokemon is or needs to die, but competition is vital. Most AAA companies hate it when you play other games. They want you to play theirs and only theirs, keeping you hooked with battle passes, daily shop drops, and new game modes. AAA sees this industry as a zero-sum world, but people are getting fed up. They see the live service model as the death of gaming. Just search live service games on YouTube and you'll see what I mean. It's crazy that post-launch support, which is a good thing, hurts the industry when it's pushed to the extreme. Right? The pendulum has swung too far. Studios are so desperate to keep something alive, they ruin their reputation and potentially tarnish their growth. Too worried about creating a live service game that lasts forever instead of creating new experiences. Calling a game dead pushes the idea that a game needs to live forever, but it doesn't. We need to accept that a game dying is healthy. Even though Palworld has lost most of its players, the game was a huge success. And with the DLC releasing, players are coming out of the woodwork to play it. It's great to add and update games, but pushing people to only play one title or one genre forever is not the answer. Games and the gaming industry need to change, pushing people to try new things and enjoy new experiences.
Play all the indies you can, spend as much money on indies as you can, really support the guys who are trying to make fun games. Who cares if there's only 5 people playing it, and just enjoy yourself. just enjoy games. I don't think it needs to be any more complex than that.
If you want to help indie developers succeed, come join our Patreon. 100% of the money from Patreon goes to help indie developers. Not to mention, you'll get to access exclusive interviews, including Bucky's from Pocketpair. Lastly, we are bringing back the Indie Spotlight. Woo! And our community picked Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is a beautiful game filled with space exploration and unique mechanics. I really enjoyed this game myself, and I would highly suggest picking up a copy. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.